continue the conversation about the NFL draft because I am pumped up about who we have joining us right now. He is the lead draft analyst for Pro Football Focus. He also is the co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. He is Trevor Sikkema, and he joins us now on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Trevor, appreciate your time. Happy Sunday, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate you having me, Jake. Excited to talk to you.
So I'm curious, Trevor, based on what we have seen in free agency, give me a feel for which teams you think maybe have a different draft strategy or a different approach based on some of the moves they made in free agency.
It's obviously a great question. I think at the very top, I don't know if this really changes sort of what we thought, but the desperation level now for those three teams picking at the top of the draft, I just didn't think that this was going to be the case, right? I figured we would go into free agency. I figured, all right, well, the Giants will get somebody. Cleveland will go and get somebody. I suppose they got Kenny Pickett, and I suppose the Giants did eventually sign Jameis Winston. But, look at the Tennessee Titans. I mean, they haven't signed anybody. So it was a situation where, all right, now we're talking about, well, what if the Titans trade back? Because that was the talk of the town at the Combine. All right, the Titans feels like they want to trade back, feels like they're not going to go after a quarterback. They might get a veteran guy in there. And now it just feels as though those teams are all so desperate for a QB. We don't know what's going to happen because there's not enough. It's not last year's quarterback class. So you got to take that into account when you're sort of trying to predict what's going to happen in this draft. I think New England did a really good job of attacking the defensive side of the football heavily in free agency to really give them maximum flexibility. The chaos of those top three picks, they're sort of a storyline to themselves, and we have to start there. But I would say what New England did, just giving so many resources to the defensive side of the football, really changes, I think, what they're going to do at number 4 overall, including entertain a lot of trade down options. So for me, that's just off the top of my head, the scenarios that have changed and how surprising was free agency was in a couple of ways.
Cam Ward's pro day, I believe, is tomorrow, Trevor. Are you expecting Cam, when it's all said and done, to be the number 1 pick either by Tennessee or if a team would still make a trade all the way up to number 1 with the Titans?
Yeah, I am. I don't think that we're going to see a late run here by Shadur Sanders. I feel as though if he was really thought of as that, number 1 overall quarterback, we would have sort of figured that part of the conversation out. So, yes, ultimately, I do still think it's going to be Cam Ward, no matter how he performs his pro day, no matter what he ends up doing at his pro day. I think that that's very, very low on the judging scale when it comes to rounding out these guys' scouting reports. So I do believe that the Cam Ward will be the number 1 overall pick when it's all said and done.
Trevor Sikkema joining us here, PFF lead draft analyst. Check out his podcast with Connor Rogers, the NFL Stock Exchange pod. It's available where you get your podcasts, including YouTube as well. Great listen, great watch if you're a fan of the draft. As far as the other quarterbacks go, I want to start with Shadur Sanders, Trevor, because I can't for certain figure out if he's going to go number 2 to Cleveland. If he's there at 3, I would think the Giants would be all over it. But it seems like the general public is very split on what the Browns are going to do with that number 2 pick. Do you think ultimately it's quarterback like Sanders, or could you see Sanders being there at number 3 for the Giants?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting part of answering this question is that it's not really unanimous that I think that Sanders is seen even as a first-round quarterback. And I think that if he is picked in the top 3, I think it's more out of desperation than anything of like, oh, yeah, Sanders is this can't miss. We've got to take him, no question about it, type of a prospect. I don't think it's exactly like the 2022 draft was where, we didn't really know what to think of Desmond Ridder and Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell and not Malik Neighbors, Malik Willis. All right. And it was, it ended up being Kenny Pickett gets picked in the first round, and then we don't see another quarterback taken until the 3rd. And I just think that the NFL just was not in on those guys. I don't think that it's quite that conversation. So with as desperate as Cleveland is and as desperate as the New York Giants are, even though I think if you polled most scouts and general managers around the NFL, they'd probably tell you that Shadur might be anywhere from a late first-round pick to probably some sort of a day 2 grade. I, at this point, would think that it would be surprising if he does not go in the top 3 because these teams are just that desperate at the position.
It feels like, Trevor, that within the first 4 picks, it could be both the quarterbacks gone and then Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter in whatever order. Is that the sense you get that of like the maybe like the top 7 picks in this draft, like 4 of those players I just mentioned feel likely to be gone by then?
It does. It seems a little bit chalk in that regard. Now, I don't know what the order of those players are going to be. I think it really puts an interesting scenario on the table with New England sitting there at number 4, because you figure that 2 of the 3 picks that are going to be picked before them are going to be quarterbacks because these teams are so desperate for one. Well, mathematically, then that only means that one of Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter can get picked before them. And I think that New England is absolutely sitting pretty in that regard, because they're going to take advantage since they already have Drake May in hand. And it's sort of hard to look at this class. And I think that if you talk to most evaluators, whether they're in the league or outside the league, they would tell you that they have some order of Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter at the top of their big board, no question about it. And yet, feels like one of them is going to be available at number 4, which seems kind of crazy given how unanimous it is that those 2 guys are at the top of most big boards. So it just really does set up just such an interesting scenario with New England of who is going to be on the board, how coveted they will be for the teams that are picking behind them, and what they end up doing.
Trevor Sikkema with us here on Mad Dog Sports Radio as we talk all things draft. Trevor, I remember when I had you on my local show. I think it was at Radio Row at the Super Bowl. It was right after Senior Bowl week, and there was a lot of buzz about Jackson Dart. And I remember talking to you then. I think we both agreed, like, I'm not sure, like, there's going to be enough buzz to get this guy to go in the first round or the top 10. I mean, but now it feels like as we, look at the draft discourse, 32 days to go, it feels like it'd be a surprise at this point if Jackson Dart is not a first-round pick and even a top 15 pick. What are you hearing about Dart and ultimately where you think he could potentially be drafted?
Well, I don't have anything concrete, and I think that's the tough part, right? I've heard plenty of, people talk about Jackson Dart as if they think, he would go in the top 20 or just because of, the position that he plays and how much these teams really need a quarterback. And, I hear that, but I haven't necessarily heard anybody say, yeah, I'd take him top 20. It's always, well, I think that someone in the league will take him top 20. Somebody in the league will take him first round. But I don't hear a lot of, not that anybody's going to give away draft strategies or anything like that, but, the people who I think are outside of the NFL, the independent evaluators, there's not a lot of people that have any sort of first round grade on Jackson Dart. And so when you talk to people in the league, again, I don't hear a lot of conviction from people that he would be. That's what makes this draft so fascinating of what is going to happen, because it is so much more, but when it comes to the quarterback conversation, it is so much more based around these teams are so desperate to get a young quarterback in the building just to even give them the illusion of having hope than it is, yes, I love this guy's tape. I love what he could be in the NFL. Let's build around him. And so that's what makes answering questions like that and just going through mock draft exercises is really difficult, because you could talk to some people, and if you don't put Jackson Dart in the first round of a mock, some people would tell you, man, that's unrealistic. And other people would tell you, yeah, I could totally see that happening. So Jackson Dart, just like Shadur Sanders, and basically every quarterback that isn't Cam Ward, the range of where they could get picked. Jackson Dart could get picked anywhere from number 3 overall, the New York Giants, to the 3rd round. That is how I feel this quarterback class is being talked about. It's a lot of whispers. It's a lot of, well, we think that this team will do this. Well, we think the NFL will do this. But I don't really hear a lot of conviction from anybody who might actually be in a decision-making spot.
Give me your thoughts on one of my favorite players in this draft, Penn State tight end Tyler Warren. I've seen him mocked all over the place. I've seen it as early as the Jets at number 7. Do you think after what Brock Bowers did last year, basically resetting the record books for any rookie tight end, that Tyler Warren could be a guy that teams will look at and go, well, Bowers was great. Warren's highly thought of. He could be a guy that we could plug and play and get similar results.
Sure. I think that Bowers being successful while holding the tight end position label certainly doesn't hurt Tyler Warren's case. Now, they are different players, right? Brock Bowers was seen as more of a wide receiver type, more of a slot wide receiver, what he was going to bring. Not that he's not a okay blocker. Pound for pound, I actually think he's a pretty decent blocker, and he's somebody who gives you a lot of effort, so you love that about him. But when it comes to Tyler Warren, I actually think that the NFL would be, on average, more in on Tyler Warren than maybe they would have been on Brock Bowers. If Brock Bowers was currently in this class, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that obviously not using hindsight of what we saw with him with the Raiders, it's not a foregone conclusion that Brock Bowers would be drafted ahead of Tyler Warren, because every single offensive coach that you talk to in the NFL, when they talk about the tight end position, they don't often talk about them as streamlined players. Like, they don't just say, like, oh, yeah, we just want a receiving specialist at tight end. No. When they talk about tight end, they say, ideally, we want a guy who could play in line, who could block against defensive ends, somebody who could, play in the slot for you as well, play as a wingback, maybe even play out at the sideline as an X type of a wide receiver. That's what Tyler Warren tells you he can do. Now, is he the type of blocker where you would want him one-on-one with defensive ends all the time? No, but at least he's got the size and he's got the strength to hold up, especially when he's giving help blocks. So, to me, I wonder if the NFL will gravitate towards Tyler Warren as a quote-unquote safer pick at the position than they even thought of with Brock Bowers, who it was a more talented class last year, but obviously goes outside of the top 10 and the top 12 of where he was ended up being selected. So to me, I think it's much more likely that Tyler Warren goes before where Brock Bowers went last year.
Trevor, a year ago, I mean, the draft had all these star wide receivers. We saw a bunch in the top 10. We saw Brian Thomas Jr. get drafted high, and he had a lot of success. This year, it feels like there's not nearly enough or not even close to the level of buzz and hype around some of the receivers. What are your thoughts on this receiver class this year, and who ultimately do you think are the first or second receivers off the board in round one?
Yeah, I think that it's a good wide receiver class. I do. Is it last year's class? No, it's not. But, I seem to be somebody who, actually, to answer that question, it would probably depend on how someone said that they saw Ted McMillan from Arizona. Because if you were like me and you like Tetron McMillan a lot, then you say to yourself, okay, well, now we've got a really good X type of a wide receiver, a bigger body guy who could be on the line of scrimmage, so he's a first-rounder. You've got yards after catch guys like Luther Burden and Matthew Golden who have the potential to be great route runners in the league. You got a guy like Emeka Egbuka who's been incredibly productive, and he's just so steady. He's got such a high floor, and he's an immediate wide receiver 2 at worst in the league, can even be a wide receiver 1. And then there's just a handful of guys that come after that are sort of in all different shapes and sizes depending on what you would want and how you like your supplementary wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s on your roster. So if I paint that kind of a picture, it doesn't sound so bad. But all of a sudden, if you are somebody who is wary of Ted McMillan, if you think that he's not fast enough, if you don't think he can separate in the NFL, if you're worried about Luther Burden becoming a true route runner in the NFL, well, then all of a sudden now you've got, okay, well, we like Matthew Golden, and what we've seen from him at Texas, it feels like that is kind of unanimous. And I think a lot of people like Emeka Egbuka as at least a late first-round pick. But if you don't believe in those two other guys at the very top, then all of a sudden it kind of gets scarce at the very top of what you would believe of this wide receiver class. Now, I wonder if we're going to see some of these guys actually get drafted a little bit higher than projected, because teams might be very split on how in they are on this wide receiver class. Because, again, if you paint the first picture, draft is actually decently deep at the wide receiver position in the top 50. But if you paint the second picture, well, then all of a sudden, if we need a wide receiver, we better draft one early because we don't like the rest of the guys that are here. So it's a little bit of a in the eye of the beholder type of a draft when it comes to wide receiver. I am leaning more towards I think that this is a pretty solid wide receiver class, and I like the talent overall. But there seems to be other draft analysts who think a little lower on the potential or just diversity of how good this group could be.
Trevor, great stuff. Appreciate your time. Continued success at PFF and with the podcast, man. I'll be listening.
I appreciate it, brother. Anytime.